start taping. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Tell Me More. This is the fourth episode, and this time we're having David Assil, founder of Madison Maison, a store that has been around in Beverly Hills since 1989. Hi, David. How are you?
I'm good, Annabelle. Thank you so much for hosting me.
Of course, my pleasure. So I want to say first that you are a legend in Beverly Hills and right by Rodeo Drive. For people who might not be based in LA, you've been designing shoes, apparel, loungewear, a lot of jackets as well. And you're specialized in leather that's coming from Italy, right?
Yeah, I source everything from the best tanneries as well as the second, third, fourth generation Italian artisan factories.
How many times do you go to Italy per year?
I used to go 4 times a year. Now I go twice and I drive. I start usually in Milan and I cut over to Venice. Then I cut down to the Marche, go back to Bologna, shoot down to Florence, and then go to Rome. So I cover the factories and the tanneries.
What a wonderful feast you must have every day. It really makes me dream. I love it. Okay, so the whole idea of having Italian leather came up in the 80s, I believe. I think your wife also is a supermodel. She was a very famous supermodel in the 80s, right? You guys are a power couple.
She modeled for I want to say 17 straight years. Yeah, she was in Paris, New York, London, Australia, um, different Tokyo. She on the cover of Elle and Vogue and so on. So she had a great career, and now she's went to back to school and studied spiritual psychology. So she practices that now with her clients.
That's a wonderful, wonderful, and super amazing career. So back to fashion, when you were in the 80s in Beverly Hills, we think of, very famous movies like Pretty Woman, and it really was like a very important milestone in the fashion landscape in the US. Now it's represented by more like mainstream brands and of course a few local boutiques. Can you tell us a little bit like your point of view of the evolution over 35 years of fashion in Beverly Hills? It's a very specific market too, so it's very different from New York or Miami. So how does it work? And of course, shoes wise.
Well, Los Angeles is different because it was one of the first places, or actually the first place where jeans, tennis shoes, and t-shirts were really big. And I worked at Fred Siegel in the mid '80s. That's kind of where I picked up, my sense of style for different looks. So I been in the shoe business since I was 15. I started the stock room in the San Fernando Valley when I was going to high school. Then I sold shoes in college in Westwood, going to UCLA. Then I
Wow.
Fred Siegel. I became an assistant buyer in the shoe department. I started the help designing cowboy boots there. I was the first one in the world to have them change the heels on Tony Lama and Justin, make the shaft real narrow because cowboy boots at the time were more unisex. So, like a woman would come in and buy a men's six, which would be like a woman's eight, but the shaft was really wide and the heel was clunky. So I started with that, and then eventually I opened my own store on Melrose. Melrose was the hot spot in the '80s, late '80s in Los Angeles.
And
Then,
for people who don't know, Fred Siegel is very, very close by Melrose. I think the milestone of the Fred Siegel store was in Melrose, correct?
yeah, Fred Siegel. Fred started on Melrose. I think his first store was in Santa Monica in the mid '60s. Then he moved to Melrose in Crescent Heights. It was an iconic store.
So for you guys, if you've never seen Fred Siegel, you don't know what it is, I recommend you to watch the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio called Catch Me If You Can. There's actually an amazing scene, and it shows the store in its heydays. So you'll see there's a lot of shoes as well.
And it was such a fun job. I got to tell you, you worked there, and all the movie stars came in, and musicians and so on. And at the time, they didn't have stylists, so you helped them. They give you their home phone number. You'd call them when you got new things in, and you
Wow.
developed a rapport with them. So it was just a great job. It was like going to work every day, and you loved every day. And eventually, I moved on and started my own company. I was 25 when I started Madison.
That's amazing. So at the time, stylist, that was not even a job being a stylist. That's kind of what you're saying.
Pretty much no. I mean, they all came and bought their own clothes. They didn't really have personal shoppers. Um, and the Fred didn't allow paparazzi on the lot. He would
Mm.
keep them out. So they were very comfortable coming to Fred Siegel. So you could have a day where, Michael Jackson and Sting and um, Sean Penn and Madonna would be there at the same time. And, it was exciting as a young kid, and you're working with these people, and, you just speak to them one on one as one person to another. You had great conversations, and they enjoyed it because they could go out in the public and not be harassed, and they felt real comfortable at Fred Siegel. So that was a really great learning experience for me, both from a fashion point of view and also as confidence as a young person. When you can have these conversations with these people that are such high profile, it helps you establish your own confidence.
So moving forward, speaking of confidence, you're confident enough to start your own company at 25, which is extremely impressive. Did you manage to get that clientele, and like what inspired you for your first design? So you said you were talking about like cowboy boots being available for women. So that's very good because it's already talking about inclusivity before its period of time. But is there anything else that people really dug in the 80s, beginning of the 90s? Like if you can tell the audience who might not be a shoe expert about pieces that were really the it pair in the 90s in LA.
Well, the '80s were very much for men were low cut shoes, like Cole Haan and Lorenzo Bonfi, very Miami Vice, with like wide colored pants and so on. So that's what the fashion was. And then you had trends hit. I remember like the first Reeboks high tops that came out in the orange and the yellow and the green. And every woman came and rushed to buy those when the whole aerobics and workout uh, trend hit. So it was interesting to watch different trends. Cowboy boots became big with, I'm trying to recall the movie Urban Cowboy with John Travolta.
Yeah.
Cowboys hit and became a fashion statement. And movies have always had a big part, obviously, in fashion, sometimes setting the trends and so on. So that started. And then what happened is in the late 80s, heavy shoes for men started to come into fashion. So when I opened up my Melrose store, we started carrying very heavy men's shoes, brogues, lace ups, heavier boots. And the younger kids were really into that. They didn't want the low cut loafers and so on. So we were carrying shoes from David and Joan, from To Boot, from Charles Jourdan, and guys were coming in buying multiple pairs. And eventually they started bringing their girlfriends. Then the movie studio started to come when I was on Melrose. And we kind of picked up our own energy, and the store really took off. And we started to expand. And the next year, 1 year after the Melrose opening, I opened Beverly Hills.
So I love the fact that you're explaining how it's expanding. I want to go a little bit more in depth about that. We have to remind people that are listening to us that intrinsically fashion and movie, the both industries here in LA are very, very intertwined. Because a lot of brands are worn by celebrities and celebrities need novelty. Is there any like thing that you were doing specifically to have all these celebrities? So I'm sure you were known because you had a great location and great product, but is there like any tips you could give to the audience? Is there anything you would do that was like, above and beyond that other stores were not doing?
Well, what really set us and started the fire for Madison were the heavy men's shoes. When I first started, probably 60% of my men's was business was men's shoes. Then what happened is they started bringing their girlfriends in. Young movie stars started shopping. They started bringing their girlfriends in. The girls were young and attractive themselves, and we started. They started purchasing from us, and the word kind of spread because back then, obviously, no internet, so everything was word of mouth. So word of mouth spread because everybody always wanted to know what the new place was. And I was surrounded, within about a mile and a half, I had Maxfield's, I had Fred Siegel, I had Ecru, which was very famous on Melrose at the time, along with Roppongi, So there was a lot of cool stores around, and there was a lot of competition. But what set us apart was the cool men's shoes that we did, and I also carried on the cowboy boots at Madison, and that's how we got our as you'd say leg up, if I may use that phrase.
Yeah.
I came to Beverly Hills, you see it's a different animal. It's a different woman than the Melrose woman. It's an older, more sophisticated woman that travels. And at the time, the women wanted to match everything. The shoe had to match the handbag, which had to match the clothing. So it was very more almost uniform dressing. And what set us apart in Beverly Hills after a few years, we were one of the first in the world to start bringing in the designers like Miu Miu, Prada, Dolce Gabbana, Chloe, and so on.
So, moving forward, like fast forward to what's happening now in fashion, would you say that, I mean, at least that's my analysis, but I don't know if you agree or not, that in the 90s, people wanted to have labels, like famous designers. And now they still want that, but they also want independent brands because they will socially be able to say that they are an expert in the fashion field and they have found the most unique piece that their neighbors or their friends don't know about. Do you think it's still the case? Like, how do you think independent designers such as you, in terms of shoe industry, position themselves nowadays?
Well, I think it's still very difficult to be a small independent designer. Back in the 80s, when you're talking, there's a lot of boutiques, a lot of great boutiques. And unfortunately, a lot of them are now gone because uh, everything became global. So you have a lot of global brands that are everywhere. Like when I used to go shopping in the early 90s, you go to Paris or you went to Milan, or if you went to New York, all the stores were different. You had different boutiques that were just fantastic, and everybody um, had different things. So they didn't all look the same. But now, when you travel, a lot of things look the same.
Yes, there is definitely a uniformization and globalization of fashion. That's for sure. It
Right.
used to be more creative.
So it women, when we first bought Miu Miu, they had six shoes on a floor in a showroom. Nobody knew what Miu Miu was. When we bought Balenciaga, they had one bag hanging on a rack. Nobody really knew who Prada was. Nobody really knew much about Dolce Gabbana. So it was more about bringing these styles in. And at that time, these designs were impeccable, both from a standpoint of design, quality, the pricing was fair, and the shoes, you could wear them many different ways. So that's what started the fire with the designers. And then over time, it became saturated because they opened so many doors. And long story short, the pricing went through the roof. And I noticed the quality changed as well greatly. And it also became shoes that were more very, very specific, where they would tell you after 6 months that that shoe you bought for $1,200 is now out of style. You have to buy this shoe. When the economy was raging and was fantastic, women didn't have a problem with that. But I think it finally kind of caught it up with itself. And I think people are now reevaluating on, are they buying a brand just for the name, or are they buying it because they like the style? And that's why I started Madison Maison.
Yes, so it's also, I mean, thank you for explaining. It's also like important to remind our audience that you are a big fan of collaborating with other designers, other independent designers, in order to raise awareness around people who are doing things right, who are using great quality. I've been to your store many times in Beverly Hills, and I've seen collaborations for bags, collaborations for clothes, collaborations for shoes. So I think it's a very smart marketing and sales strategy because you are combining forces. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came up with the idea and so far your most successful collaboration?
Well, I realized that collaborations obviously bring energy. So I've been very much into collaborations for quite a while. I've done collaborations in shoes with MoMA. I recently did a collaboration with Joan Hornig, who's a famous jewelry designer and a very big philanthropist. in New York. She's just a great soul. She came in one day to show me her jewelry, and she was an existing client of ours. And I'd been thinking for a long time to do a loafer with a lock on it. And when I saw her jewelry, she had a jewelry with a little, really, really cool lock, with little diamonds on the loop shape of the handle, and a gold lock that wasn't too shiny. So I said, Joan, I'd love to collaborate with you and take this lock and put it on loafers. And within 5 minutes, we discussed it, and she said, "Go ahead." And I made a sample. She loved it, and that's where I'd say that's probably my best collaboration so far. We've got written up in Forbes, Footwear News. It's been pulled by L'Officiel and shown in Europe, also covered in Elle, and so that was a really wonderful collaboration so far.
And for you guys who want to know more about David and Joan's Horning collaboration, make sure you listen to the episode number 3 of Tell Me Mode that's available on replay on Apple and Spotify, since I have interviewed Joan last week. You'll see it's an amazing story of jewelry, and you'll learn a lot about that industry, which is also very specific. Thank you, David, for telling us this. I do think that the lock shoe is amazing. And I'm super happy for you for getting so much visibility around it. So I think we've covered pretty much the ground right now. It's not live, so I can also talk to you like this, just so you know. The editor will have to work on that. Sorry, Krishna. But I think like we've covered the evolution of fashion. I think it's really cool that you told about that. Power of collaboration. Is there anything you'd like to add on the power of collaboration?
Um, on the power of collaboration, I'm discussing with other people at the moment, and hopefully it's going to come to fruition. I'm looking at some things that I think will be quite significant, both for myself as well as the label that I'm in discussions with. And for me, it's very exciting because, I worked with Palladium. I went back to their archives, found a boot from 1948. I redid that. That was very successful. I'm now in talks with another company to look at their archives and redo a certain shoe. I worked with Bass Weejan to bring the original penny loafer back, which John Bass did, I believe in 1938, I want to say. That's the original penny loafer. I was approached by the Bass company, Genesco, who owns them, to do a collaboration with them. That was quite successful. I've done many things with Puma and Rihanna. They've asked me to do photo shoots, which I was able to do with Colin Stark, who runs my social media, is my social media director, and he did a fantastic job. And we did a great presentation for Puma, and Rihanna actually liked 8 of the different shots that we did, which is quite unusual from what I understand from her team. So she was super happy. Puma came back to us a few times. We did other pieces with them. And now I'm looking to do other things, and those are all in the works. So I'm quite excited about that as well.
I was wondering if you could promote it or not, but I guess not yet. Okay, so that's fine. We'll put it out of the thing. I was thinking about Fila. You said Fila, but you can't really talk about it. When you were in New York.
Yeah, I don't want to discuss that right now because I'm just in discussion, so I don't want to bring that up right now.
Okay, that's fine. We'll go to the next question.
Exactly.
Crossing my fingers for you. So I wanted to talk to you about something that's gonna be on the social media. So every time for every episode, there's a little snippet about 20 seconds of this Zoom that we keep in video. So it's gonna be now. So make sure you smile. I'll make sure I'll readjust my necklace. All right. So, David, you've been a shoemaker for more than 35 years now, and I wanted to have your opinion about vegan leather and vegan shoes. Because if I understood well, you only do genuine leather from Italy. So, in a few words, what do you think about that trend?
To me, it's a trend. I'm not sure how much sense it makes because it's supposed to be, to help save the planet. But when you're using material that's not real leather, you put it in a trash fill, it's not going to disintegrate like leather will. So to me, I'm not quite sure if that is something that's going to last. I think it was maybe a trend for a short period of time, Plus, for your feet to breathe, leather's always much better. And I think people are starting to understand that materials that are synthetic on your body aren't always the healthiest thing.
Super. Thank you. And cut. Um, yeah, no, it's not great. So
I'll talk about the events I have coming up with Stanley Korshak and in store.
yeah, we have still some time. I wanted to know because your sneakers, are they vegan? They're not like the one with the fabric. There is a little, they are vegan. There's no leather in it, is it?
The sneakers that I made are suede on the outside, leather on the insole,
Oh, okay, so
leather lining. The bottoms, of course, are a unit rubber bottom, and then the nylon that I use is I believe is the best nylon factory in the entire world, which is Lamonte. It's the same one Prada uses for the last 40 years.
mm,
So, and then I did a 3D star on it, rubber, which took a long time to actually get it right because they're having trouble putting the 3D rubber star onto the nylon without burning the nylon with a heat infusion. But they figured that out, and that shoe has performed extremely well. I'm very, very happy with that design.
I've been a fashion journalist for 16 years now. And I think that really being a shoe designer is the hardest thing you can do in fashion. Compared with making clothes, making jewelry, making hats, making shoes is really, really hard because you have to have it's first of all the most expensive production you can have because you have to have the molds, you have to design yourself. What drives you to keep on doing it? Because it is very, very hard and costs are rising for material. So why did you choose shoes?
Well, yeah, I grew up in the shoe business. I started actually the shoe business at 15 in the stockroom in the high school. So it kind of was just in my blood. And it's a funny story how I got into shoes, actually. My mom one summer said, "Hey, you're going to get a job this summer. You're not loafing around with your friends." I was like, God, okay. So my cousin calls me one day. He just got his license. He said, "Hey, I'm going to go look for a job. You want to come?" I said, "Sure." We drove down to Ventura Boulevard in San Fernando Valley, and we went inside what was at the time a multi-chain store out in Los Angeles, was called Standard Shoes. Walked in, he said, "Hey, I'm here to apply for a job." And the manager looked at him and said, "Do you have a social security card?" And he said, "No, what's that?" And then he looked at me and said, "Do you have a social security card?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Here, fill out this form." I did. I got the job, and that's how I ended up in the shoe business. So, if I don't go that day with my cousin or my mom doesn't tell me to go get a job, my life is completely different. So it just goes to show you how you fall into things in life with just one incident.
That's wild. Yeah, that's funny. I mean, it was meant to be, truly.
Something like that. And as a kid, I loved tennis shoes. I grew up in the '70s, so everybody either had the Puma or the Adidas or the Converse. So Nike didn't exist at the time, so it was always about what tennis shoe you wore as a kid.
Hmm.
So we were all into our tennis shoes. It was every kid was. So it just got into my blood, and then I just started working at the shoe store. And one day I counted, Annabelle. I've probably seen about 10 million shoes in my lifetime at shows. I counted all the shows. I went to Dusseldorf, Milan, Paris, New York, Las Vegas, also other cities. I took all the hallways that I attended, multiplied by all the rooms that I went in, multiplied that by how many shoes were in each room. So I've got a library in my head. So for me, it's really easy to come up with design. I'm lucky enough to work with some of the best factories in the world. When I say that, I make my loafers with Marabini. I make boots with King Tartufoli and Fazron Janou. I make high heels with Russo. So I pick different factories to make different shoes because they excel at that one style or that one product. So I don't go to one or two factories to make everything. I handpick the factory that I want to work with based on what the design that I brought to the table. And that's when I did my tennis shoe, I went to Cal Pierre. They already had a great bottom and were making sneakers. So for me, it was easy decision on where to take that shoe to.
Well, next time you take me on a Euro trip and
Okay.
we'll see all the factories. Um, well, thank you so much for like driving us down to the memory lane of Beverly Hills until nowadays. It looks very glamorous. I wish I was born to assist that. And now I want to talk about the future and your next project. So we've already talked a little bit about it, but you said that you have a few events coming up in LA because you are lucky and fortunate enough to have beautiful store by the Golden Triangle by Rodeo Drive. And you said that this month, which is for the audience, in case you didn't know, the Fashion Month, you're going to have two events. You're going to have one on the 26th and one on the 28th of September. So tell us more about it.
Actually, you're correct on both of those. But prior to that, I'm going to Dallas next week on the 19th and 20th. Stanley Korshak invited me to do a trunk show with our collection. I'm super excited about that. To me, Stanley Korshak is one of the five best stores in the United States. Uh,
Wonderful.
their impeccable taste, impeccable clientele, and for them to ask and invite me to do that is a feather in my cap. So I'm excited about that. Then on the 26th, I'm doing an event in store to launch fall. And then on the 28th, my manager, Silvana, who worked for me for about, I believe, 13 or 14 years, um, is coming back to do another event with me on that Saturday. And we're going to invite our clientele to kick off fall.
What is the most exciting piece for you for this photo collection? The boots are back, I guess.
I really love the lock series I did with Joan. I mean, everybody's loving the heel. They're loving the two tall boots that I did and the handbags. So I'm super excited about the whole lock series. And I love the lock loafer that I also did with the Marabini factory. So I'm very excited about that. And the reception on all of them has been tremendous so far, both online and in store.
Well, it's very inspiring to have talked to you for so long. I'm so happy you took the time for this. And thank you so much again for being on the podcast of Tell Me Mode. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, we just started wholesale, so I'm super excited about that. And we're inside Lisa Sola showroom in New York. She's wonderful, and she's opened 20 accounts in a short period of time. And most of the people have already reordered, and the sell-through's been wonderful. So my whole idea when I started Madison Maison was to give the client great, comfortable fit, because I don't think that really is around that much anymore in designer shoes, because they've taken a lot of the great leathers and great parts and components out of it and replaced them with more inexpensive materials. So for me, it was really important to work with the best factories, which I am, work with the best tanneries, which I am, and then combine the two together to come up with something that a woman can also wear 10 years from now. Because when I design, I always ask myself, I look at the shoe and the design of the shoe, and I say, could a woman have worn this in the 1960s or 70s or 80s? So if the answer is yes, then I think I'm on point. I update the styling, and then I know she'll be able to pull it out of her closet 10 years or 15 years from now and still wear it. Plus, I also try to make the shoes so they can be somewhat dress or casual, because it's really nice to be having a piece that you works with a lot of your wardrobe. And I also believe that it's important to cross boundaries generational wise, so that a woman that's 18 or a woman that's 80 can wear my shoes. So I feel like we've hit those targets, and that's why I feel really great about the Madison Maison line.
And I think that that's why I love your brand so much too. It's because it's timeless elegance. You can feel the European touch, you can feel the quality, and they're really versatile. So that's why they are definitely the best indie brand in Beverly Hills. Thank you so much again, David, for your time. And thank you so much, you guys, for listening. I'll see you next week. Bye bye.
Thank you, Annabelle. Bye.